Hello students, welcome to today's lecture which is on second wave feminism. So in our previous lecture we had seen the first wave feminism, so it is in continuity with that. So today we'll say what exactly is second wave feminism. We'll just go not very much in detail of it, but yes, briefly I have highlighted almost all the important points for you to understand what was second wave feminism. So if we look at this, then obviously feminism in second phase is usually demarcated from 1960s to the late 1980s. It was a reaction to women returning to their roles as housewives and mothers after the end of the Second World War. So the men that had to leave the workforce to join the defense forces had returned, and women were fired from their positions and replaced by men. That means there were no more, the females were no more required in the offices, and they were being sent back to their roles as a housewives. So that brought overall a movement, or a new sort of movement in which they were again being sent back and confined to their households. So 38% of American women who worked in the 60s were largely limited to jobs as teachers, nurses, or secretaries. So women were expected to quietly resume their lives as a loyal and subjugated wives, and housewives were estimated to spend an average of 55 hours a week on domestic chores. So, however, after having worked and been independent of male dominance during the war, women did not want to resume their role, and this brought about the second wave of feminism. So, this movement was initially concentrated in the United States of America and then spread to the other Western countries. So, while the first wave was largely concerned with the suffragette struggle for the vote, the second wave focused more on both public and private injustice. So, coming on to this presentation. So, second wave feminism, as I already told you, refers to the period of activity in the early 1960s and lasting through the late 1980s. The scholar Imelda Wallach suggests that the second wave was a continuation of the earlier phase of feminism involving suffragettes in UK and USA. So, second wave feminism has continued to exist since that time and coexist with what is termed third wave feminism. The scholar Friedman compares first and second wave feminism, saying that the first wave focused on the rights such as suffrage. So, what exactly was suffragette here? Because I feel that you need to understand what was suffragette. So, before 1920s, women did not have the right to vote in US, which we had discussed in the previous class also. The suffragist movement brought, or it was a fight for this right, and the people who were part of that movement were called suffragists. So, the word suffragist means the right to vote in elections, and in America, the individual state determined who may vote. So, however, the US Constitution states in the 19th Amendment that women shall not be denied the vote based upon sex. So, suffragists fought hard to bring this constitutional amendment about, and back then female suffragists were known as suffragettes. So, this is particularly what suffragettes mean. Then moving on further. So, the first movement, as I have already told, was more about suffragettes, whereas the second wave was largely concerned with other issues of equality such as ending discrimination, because there was discrimination not just in the houses or homes, household limitations, but the females faced the similar discrimination when they went to the workplaces. There was like a disparity in the salaries, there were disparity in the work hours which were assigned to them. So there was a lot of discrimination which they had to face. So now basically in second wave we find that the fight was for ending this discrimination and to bring about overall equality. So the feminist activities in author Carol Hanisch coined the slogan "the personal is political," which became synonymous with the second wave. So the second wave feminists saw women's cultural and political inequalities as inextricably linked, and encouraged women to understand aspects of their personal lives as deeply politicized and reflecting sexist power structure. So, coming to Simone de Beauvoir and the second sex. the French author and philosopher Simone de Beauvoir wrote novels, monographs and on philosophies, politics and social issues, essays, biographies, and an autobiography. She is now best known for her metaphysical novels, including She Came to Say and The Mandarins, and for her treatise The Second Sex, a detailed analysis of women's oppression and a foundation tract of contemporary feminism, because it is considered to be the Bible of the feminism or feminist movement. So, written in 1949, its English translation was published in 1953. So it sets out a feminist existentialism which prescribes a moral revolution. So when we are talking about existentialist, then obviously we come to the second very important point. As an existentialist, she accepted Jean-Paul Sartre's percept existence precedes essence. Hence, one is not born a woman but becomes a woman. So here we need to understand what exactly is existentialism, because as here it's said by Simone de Beauvoir that one is not born a woman but becomes one. So what exactly is existentialism? So it is a tradition of philosophical inquiry that explores the nature of existence by emphasizing experience of the human subject, not merely the thinking subject, but the acting, feeling, living human individual. In the view of existentialists, the individual's starting point is characterized by what has been called the existential angst, or variably existential attitude or dread. So variably we can understand it as existential attitude or dread. So, or a sense of disorientation, there is confusion or anxiety in the face of an apparently meaningless or absurd world. That means it revolves around that absurdity, and the biggest question is about existence. So this is what is existentialism. Further, so here her analysis focuses on social construction of woman as the other. So this de Beauvoir identify as fundamental to the woman's oppression. She argues women have historically been considered deviant and abnormal, and contends that even Mary Wollstonecraft considered men to be the ideal toward which women should aspire. So de Beauvoir argues that for the feminism to move forward, this attitude must be set aside. So now coming to this feminine mystique. So Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique, which was written in 1963, criticized the idea that women could only find fulfillment through child rearing and homemaking. That means the ultimate purpose of the female was to bring up her children and look after the house. So according to Friedan's obituary in the New York Times, the feminine mystique ignited the contemporary women's movement in 1963. As a result, permanently transformed the social fabric of the United States and countries around the world, and is widely regarded as one of the most influential non-fiction book of 20th century. Further analyzing her paper, we just see that in Friedan's hypothesis that in this book, Friedan hypothesizes that women are victims of false belief system that requires them to find identity and meaning in their lives through their husband and children. So without husband and children, what it tries to say is that the female don't have any existence or any meaning of their life. So such a system causes women to completely lose their identity in that of their family. That means they don't have any individual identity. Either they'll be like, obviously in like previous class we had discussed the same thing, that either she'll be identified with the name of her father, or after marriage she has got the identification of her husband. Without that identification or without the name of father and husband, she doesn't has her own identity. And once if like circumstances be so, if she is left only with the children, I mean if even her husband dies, then obviously she'll be recognized as the mother of the children, but she doesn't has an identity of herself or her own. So this is what she's trying to say, that such a system causes women to completely lose their identity in that of their family. Friedan specifically locates this system amongst post-World War II middle-class suburban communities. So if we concentrate that where such system was prevalent. Then she says that it was prevalent among the middle class suburban communities. So at the same time, America's post-war economic boom had led to the development of new technologies that were supposed to make household work less difficult. That means now the females were not forced to spend that much of time in household chores, because there were like new technologies which had come up, new innovation in the field of kitchen appliances and all had come up. So obviously that was considered to be a revolution, the kitchen revolution. So but that often had the result of making women's work less meaningful and valuable. So obviously now it started become a belief, or becoming a prevalent the saying that the household task of females are nothing, because they have got so many appliances and so many gadgets in the kitchen to help them out. So obviously their work became even more less meaningful and less valuable. So finally we come to women's liberation in the USA. So the phrase women's liberation was first used in United States in 1964 and first appeared in the print in 1966. So by 1968, although the term Women's Liberation Front appeared in the magazine Ramparts, it was starting to refer to the whole women's movement. There was another movement which was called bra burning, also became associated with the movement, though the actual prevalence of bra burning is debatable. But here I have written a special note for this bra burning movement, because in a letter on August 29, 1968 to the city mayor, Morgan requested a permit. And here she explained that the purpose of this protest, that was bra burning. So it was not just bra burning, but they had protested with by burning the makeup. The makeups of the females. Artificial hairs and everything. So it was a protest against this movement. They had this protest in this movement. Protest was to demonstrate their objection to the events focus on women's body over their brains, on youth rather than maturity, and on commercialization rather on humanity. So this was basically a protest against Miss America contest, which was going to be held in 1969. So one of the most vocal critics of women's liberation movement has been the African American feminist and intellectual Gloria Jean Watkins, who uses pseudonym Bell Hooks. That means she used to write with the name of Bell Hooks, and who argues that this movement glossed over race and class and thus failed to address the issues that divided women. That means it deviated from the real cause of the women. That means what exactly was feminism. So it deviated from that path. She highlighted the lack of minority voices in the women's movement in her book Feminist Theory from Margin to Center in 1984. Now, obviously, when we talk about this feminist movement, that means it's not that it had deviated completely. There were too many reforms, too many changes which were brought about due to this movement. So women were participating in the freedom struggle and independence, promised freedom from imperialism, in third world countries, and their marginalized role in society. While the feminist movements in the West and India fought for the ultimate goal of equality. Obviously, the ultimate goal of feminism, if we look deep into it, is to bring about equality. Though there is always an argument that either way we shift the periphery. So it's never going to be equal. But still, the fight was for the equality. The problem they tackled and obstacle they hit were vastly distinct. So while in the second wave, we say that it was valuable in broadening the scope of feminist causes, it had flaws and failures as well, because it is from issues of racial discrimination within the second wave that rose intersectional feminism. We had discussed this point in the previous lecture also. So intersectionality is defined by a dictionary or Merriam dictionary as the complex cumulative manner in which the effect of different forms of discrimination combine, overlap, or intersect. So there is this is what they are trying to say, that the second wave that rose that give rise to intersectional feminism. So in feminist terms, It means taking into account disparities in discrimination and sexism faced by different ethnicities and race, and thus making feminism not selective but all inclusive equality. It should not be confined to one race, it should not be confined to one class. It is like for everyone, like everyone who is female has got the right to be part of it, and obviously they should be involved. Their concern, their plight should be a part of this movement. They should not be segregated, there shouldn't be any discrimination. So the second wave was pivotal to the feminist movement and brought women into mainstream in many spheres. So like yesterday we had again discussed these 2 points, like mainstream and alternative feminism. So this second wave was pivotal to the feminist movement in this way and brought women into the mainstream in many spheres, but it had its mistakes. So learning from this is what will determine what shapes the movement, shape the movement takes next. That means how it is going to be in the third wave, or how it is going to move forward in the third wave of feminism, and how it is going to work on the shortcomings which it had faced during the second wave of feminism. So this is all for the today's class. Thank you all.